Hi guys, James back with another top 10 video, and this is the one that I mentioned, I believe it was yesterday, I think, about if you clicked on, you know the title anyway, but I'm going to say the top 10 sex comedies. Now I was kind of going back and forth between like gross out comedies or sex comedies, but they're essentially one and the same thing, and as I said before, the sex comedy title is more of a catch-all. And it's just it's movies like in the vein of, well, you can just say all the American Pie movies, essentially American Pie movies, Van Wilder, that kind of raunchy comedy. So that is what we're doing today. All right. So we will start with number 10. Number 10 is a film from 2002 called Buying the Cow. Now this one was originally made in, I think it was either 2000, 2001, and released in 2002. It was the first film by Walt Becker, and he's the director who made the original Van Wilder film, Wild Hogs, Old Dogs, the one with John Travolta and Robin Williams, and then he went on to do one of the Alvin and the Chipmunks movies. But his first few movies were in the raunchy comedy vein. First of which being this, it was made before Van Wilder, but it was put on the shelf and then released direct to video the same year that Van Wilder came out. Sort of I guess to capitalize on the growing fame of Ryan Reynolds, who was front and center for Van Wilder. But if you watch this movie, and the star is essentially Jerry O'Connell, and then I believe you have Bill Bellamy, Ryan Reynolds as his two best friends, as well as Ron Livingston, and you got Jerry O'Connell's fiance in the movie, or girlfriend in the movie, played by Bridget Wilson. You got Alyssa Milano in there, John Tenney, Annabeth Gish. And those are essentially the more recognizable ones. But if you watch it, Ryan Reynolds is really the strong supporting actor, and you can tell where the Van Wilder character, maybe like the seeds of the Van Wilder character, because the supporting character is so strong and so funny in the movie. Now, essentially, you have Jerry O'Connell is in a relationship with Bridget Wilson, and she's pressuring him to pop the question, to propose. And so she goes away for a couple of weeks on a business trip, and his friends keep pushing him to get back on the dating scene. So he's sort of doing that, but he's also always had this dream of meeting the girl that he met when he was like 12 or 13 in an airport, where he thought they had an instant connection. He gave her his number and she never called or wrote or anything like that. So he's always had this dream of meeting her. Well, he ends up meeting up with one of his friends, played by Ron Livingston, who's always been a player and played the field and stuff like that. And he has recently become engaged. And when he meets his new fiance, it turns out it's the girl that he met in the airport so many years ago, and she doesn't remember him. He definitely remembers her. And they're at a dinner table, and she starts to tell a story of a creepy guy she met at an airport when she was a little kid. And it turns out it's about Jerry O'Connell. It's the same story, but she doesn't remember him. But to her, it's a very traumatizing story. So she tells the first half, and then Ron Livingston steps in and tells the rest. It's like, no, he's a friend. We can tell him this story, and it's actually about him. So there's that, and then you've got Ryan Reynolds, who's another womanizer, a player guy, but he ends up sleeping with a woman, and he thinks this is it, this is the one. He had the greatest night of his life, and she had actually gone out for coffee, and her gay roommate, a guy, come in with like a robe and it was talking to him as if it was him that he was with last night. He's just really making conversation with the guy who slept with his roommate. but Ryan Reynolds' character is convinced, like, oh my god, I had sex with a guy, I must be gay, and so he's struggling with coming out to his friends and stuff, when in reality he slept with a woman. And that's his storyline through the movie. And yeah, essentially that's the gist of the movie. Because you got Ryan Reynolds going through, and like he meets up with a friend of theirs that Jerry O'Connell knew in school, a stripper played by Alyssa Milano, and ends up with her. So it's sort of like he thought he was gay, but he is actually straight with a woman. But it's a funny roundabout way that the movie plays out. And there's no real spoilers in this movie. It's sort of like the two, like Jerry O'Connell and his girlfriend, aren't really meant to be together, so she ends up with someone else, and he ends up with someone else, who ends up actually being the sister of the girl he met in the airport. And they find Ryan Reynolds and Alyssa Milano in a limo, and the friend is like, I thought you were gay, and he's like, yeah, and your point is, and then the movie cuts to black there. It's just it's a crazy kind of movie, but it is very funny for a first film, and it shows you what would the potential that would be Van Wilder, which was Walt Becker's next film. Anyway, so that's Buying the Cow. Number 9, we have a film from 2000 called 100 Girls. Now, I remember seeing a preview for this online when I was in college, and the preview was essentially just this slideshow of pictures of girls going by, set to this amazing song, which I've never been able to find since, because the trailer got taken down or corrupted or whatever, and has never shown up since. So one day I'll find the song. But anyway, the movie stars Jonathan Tucker as a guy who he's in college in a dorm, and he ends up going down to do his laundry, and there's a power outage in the elevator, and he's in there with a girl, and they end up talking and then having sex in the elevator, but it's dark, so he can't really see her face. And then she leaves before the elevator or the power comes on or something. Like she leaves before he's able to recognize her. So his journey is he's trying to find this girl that he had the best night of his life with. But there's a dorm full of girls, 100 girls. And so he has to work his way through all the girls in the dorm, trying to find who is this perfect woman he was with for one night. And you've got real who's who of female actors in this movie. You got Emmanuel Shrieky from the Entourage TV show. You have Katherine Heigl, Jamie Presley, Marissa Ribisi. Let me see. Several other ones too, and some of the guys in the movie. You've got James DeBello and Eric Zamanda. But he ends up meeting Emmanuel Shrieky and becomes good friends with her, and she sort of helps him in his quest to find this woman. So it is a good movie, and it's great. All the different girls he meets and all their different personalities that populate this film. It's really funny. They made a sequel to it called 100 Women. And they use the same premise where a guy meets a girl, she's perfect, he loses her, tries to find her again, but it didn't capture the same magic. But the interesting thing was the movie's directed by Michael Davis, and let me see, is Michael Davis, who did a few of these kind of teen college comedies, but then he went on to do the Clive Owen movie, Shoot 'Em Up, which was amazing action movie. But he hadn't really done much since then. But if you end on a high point like that, if you ask me, you've done a good job. Anyway, so that's 100 Girls. Number 8, we have a film from 2003, and it's a National Lampoon film called Dorm Daze. National Lampoon presents Dorm Daze. And it's the first one in a trilogy of movies that has a few of the same actors that go through all 3 movies. There's Dorm Daze 2, College at Sea, and the third one doesn't have the Dorm Daze title, but it is the third one in the trilogy called Transylvania. Now, Dorm Daze 2 I had seen first, and I used to like it more than Dorm Daze 1, and then I saw Dorm Daze, and they're very similar in their premises, and then you have the third one, Transylvania, which is okay. And then I rewatched all 3 of them recently, and Dorm Daze 2 was good, Transylvania is okay, as I said, but Dorm Daze I seem to like a lot more. Now this one, let me see, some of the actors, you got Cameron Richardson, Edwin Hodge from the Purge movies, Tatiana Ali, Chris Owen from the American Pie movies, and there's only a few of the actors that you'd see in all 3 movies. You got Tony Denman, let me see, Maria Delfino, and anyway. So it's essentially you've got like 2 brothers that are in college, and one of them's a virgin, and his brother has got him a hooker because he wants to get his brother laid. And then you have Tony Denman playing Newmar, who has a great night with Cameron Richardson's character, and he's instantly in love with her, but she's not sure about that. And the confusion, and you have Edwin Hodge and Tatiana Ali, who are another couple, but Edwin Hodge is always running lines for a play that he's in with Cameron Richardson. Well, his girlfriend overhears the lines he's running with her from behind a closed door and thinks he's having an affair. And with the 2 brothers, where the one hires the hooker for the other, hires a hooker named Dominique, who's going to be coming to the dorm. Well, there's another guy, character named Wang, who has a foreign exchange student that he's been corresponding with, who's also coming to the dorm, also named Dominique. So you can see where the trouble is. the hooker shows up. They think she's a foreign exchange student. Foreign exchange student shows up, and the brother thinks that's the hooker. So they're going all over the building like that. Then you have another girl who, her name is Jerry Farber, and she ends up, I can't remember exactly how she ends up with it, but she ends up finding a bag and meeting up with a guy who's actually a criminal, and she pretends that she's the criminal contact he has. So you have several madcap storylines going on, and I thought it was handled very well. They do a similar thing in Dorm Daze 2, but it's not quite as funny, not quite as good, but almost. But yeah, so it's a very crazy movie that you have to pay attention to. I know it's rare to say you have to pay attention to one of the like raunchy sex comedies, but the storyline I thought was handled very well. So that is Dorm Daze. Number 7, we have a film from 2005, a Canadian film called The Long Weekend. And this one mainly stars Chris Klein and Brendan Fair. Chris Klein, also from the American Pie movies. And you have, in supporting roles, you have Kobe Smulders from How I Met Your Mother, and Chandra West, and in a cameo role as a body in a coffin, a woman who's died, you have Evangeline Lilly from the Lost TV show. But essentially you have Chris Klein and Brendan Fair, and Chris Klein is sort of like a womanizing kind of guy, and his younger brother, played by Brendan Fair, is an advertising executive who has a count that he's trying to nail down. His job's at stake. And if he doesn't, like I said, he's going to lose his job. And Chris Klein decides that ever since his brother found his girlfriend in bed with another man with a video camera rolling, he's been very depressed and had no luck with women. Well, Chris, the older brother, decides he's going to take his younger brother out for his birthday, and over the long weekend get him laid. And so it's their adventure over the weekend, like the brother trying to get his younger brother laid, and the younger brother not trusting his older brother, who's just like a screw-up womanizer, and like the brothers coming together as brothers. And it was a very charming movie. It was one that I picked up just by chance, like I do a lot, and I thought it was really good, the way it comes all the way around to the end. So that was The Long Weekend. Number 6, we have a film from another one from 2002, and it's called Sex in the Teenage Mind. Now this one, I couldn't find anything on Wikipedia about it, but it's on IMDb. Another one I just picked up just because I thought it looked interesting, and reading the back and stuff. And the only real recognizable actors, mostly, you see, there's Alison Lang in there, Danica McKellar from The Wonder Years, and a little bit in How I Met Your Mother. You have Richard Karn from Home Improvement, Jordan Belfi, Dee Wallace, and the main guy is Virgil, played by J. Michael Ferguson, and he has one, like a friend, his best friend, Dwayne, played by Michael Bauer. Michael Bauer is really the comic relief in this movie, and he does a great job. And J. Michael Ferguson is the sort of quirky, dorky, kind of nerdy guy who has always lusted after Alison Lang's character, Kelly. And he's trying to, prom is coming up, and he would love to ask her. But she's the very cool hot chick at school who has the cool hot boyfriend and stuff like that. So there's no chance for him to get her. But he ends up defending her in certain situations, and she asks him to tutor her for exams and stuff. And they start a friendship, and they get close, and they go out actually on a date. And okay, spoiler alert. Because normally this wouldn't happen in these kind of movies. That's why I said the spoiler alert. I'm gonna spoil, because there's a hook behind the movie, and it's sort of some people think it's a cheat sometimes, but about 95% of the movie, no, not 95% of the movie, 95% of the way through the movie, you get like them meeting, blah, 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 getting ready to go out on their date, and then they have their date, it's great, and she's going to go to prom with him and stuff like that. And then it gets towards the end of the movie, and it ends up being, he was getting ready to go pick her up and getting all dressed up and having the roses and stuff like that. He ends up slipping and falling in his house. And he gets up, he's fine, goes, has the date and everything, and most of the rest of the movie happens. And then it turns out that the whole date and everything after that didn't actually happen. It was when he had fallen and hit his head. But he ends up going on the date anyway, and everything ends up working out. I won't say exactly how. I'll leave that to if you find and watch the movie. But it was a very, very, very charming movie, and I haven't seen J. Michael Ferguson in anything before or since, although I think he probably has. And you've also got Michael Bauer, who's like this big heavy-set guy who ends up getting a date to the prom with this other big heavy-set girl or whatever, who's a really good friend of his. Anyway, it's a sweet movie, and it's sweet, the relationship between J. Michael Ferguson and Alison Lang in the movie. So it's worth watching it. And like I knew the spoiler going in and watching it the second and third time, but it's still nice to see how it unfolds. So that's why I gave the warning, but it's still a good movie. Okay, So that was Sex and the Teenage Mind. Number 5, we have a film from 2014 called Date and Switch. And this one stars, you got Nicholas Braun, Hunter Cope, Dakota Johnson as the main, and let me see, Sarah Hyland as the main 4 people. But you've also got Brian Garrity, Zach Kreger, Gary Cole, Nick Offerman, Megan Mullally as like various parents and stuff like that. Essentially, it's Nicholas Braun and Hunter Cope who are best friends, and they're also in this. It's like TV theme show song instrumental cover band. It's a very weird kind of concept. And you got Nicholas Braun and his girlfriend, and Hunter Cope and his girlfriend. And Hunter ends up breaking up with his girlfriend, who's Dakota Johnson, and Nicholas Braun breaks up with his girlfriend, played by, Sarah Hyland, because they've been going out for 8 or 9 months and she won't have sex with him. So it's a very shallow reason that he breaks up with her. But anyway, and Hunter breaks up with Dakota Johnson's character because essentially, and he ends up telling Nicholas Braun, his friend, that he realizes that he's been gay his whole life. And he ends up meeting all these guys, and then Nicholas Braun ends up hanging out with his best friend's ex-girlfriend, Dakota Johnson. So it's sort of like they break up with their girlfriends, and the one guy goes out with guys, and the other guy goes out with his ex-girlfriend, who ends up being like a good friend of his. Hence probably the Date and Switch kind of title. And it's a really good movie that I don't think was very well known. I remember hearing about it and then picking it up when it came out, but I don't see it talked about anywhere really. But it's great because you got Zach Kreger from The Whitest Kid You Know, I think it's called, and Miss March and stuff like that. And he ends up being a guy who the two friends get in an altercation with, who ends up that he had a bad night. He's not really like that. Well, he ends up dating his best friend Hunter, and ends up being a really cool guy. And yeah, that's essentially what it is. It's like him getting closer with his buddy's ex-girlfriend, and his buddy getting closer with this guy who they almost had a fight with. So it is a good movie. Date and Switch. And Nick Offerman as Nicholas Braun's dad is very funny, and Megan Mullally and Gary Cole as Hunter's parents are equally funny. So great supporting cast, great lead cast too. Anyway, so number 4. Number 4, we have a film, an Australian film from 2000 called Better Than Sex. And this is one of those films that takes place largely in one location. And this is a flat, an apartment. And you got David Wenham, Faramir from the Lord of the Rings movies, meets the girl Susie Porter playing Sin. David Wenham plays Josh. They meet at a party a few days before David Wenham's character has to fly back to London. And so they have a one-night stand kind of thing, and he decides, they have a good connection, so he decides to stick around, stay at her place for a few days until he has to go back. And a lot of it is just their relationship in and out of bed in that apartment. And that's largely the lion's share of the movie. So it's a great rapport they have, great chemistry that David Wenham and Susie Porter have in this movie, like their conversations in and out of bed, as I said, and stuff. So there's not much to the movie, but the dialogue is really rich in this movie. That is Better Than Sex. Number 3, we have a film from 2009, and a direct-to-video film. This is Van Wilder, Freshman Year. Now, Van Wilder is a classic, but it's very well known. Van Wilder, The Rise of Taj, where you take like Taj, sporting character, foreign exchange student from the first one, gets his own movie where he goes to England to go to his dad's alma mater, university. And that was a good movie. It was missing Ryan Reynolds, but it was still a great follow-up. Excuse me. Well, they decided to do a third movie, which was a prequel to Van Wilder, where you get Van Wilder first going to college. And they had Jonathan Bennett playing Van Wilder. And then you have Lyndon Ashby playing his dad. And you see you got Kristen Cavallari in there, Steve Talley, who was Dwight Stifler in American Pie, The Naked Mile and Beta House. Great job. But it's essentially him going to college, his first year, freshman year, as stated in the title. And it's him doing his thing that you see in Van Wilder, the first movie. But he's a first year student and doesn't have quite the sway. Well, he doesn't have quite the sway that he did in that movie, but he ends up gaining a lot of credibility with his friends. And it's essentially, the school is sort of a military school at the time. It's clearly not by the time you get to Van Wilder, but it does start out that way. And so he's always clashing with the military leader, who's the dean of the school, and the ROTC crew that are there. So you get like the good guys who are partiers and screw ups against the strictly regimented military guys. So good against bad, or I guess you'd say. But I thought Jonathan Bennett did a great job at playing a young Van Wilder, even though it looks nothing like Ryan Reynolds, different hair color and different person altogether. But still, being what it is, I thought it was a very funny movie. So that was Van Wilder, freshman year. Number 2, we have a film from 2009, also called Miss March. And this one is written and directed and starring the guys from The Whitest Kid You Know. And it's Zach Kreger and Trevor Moore. And it shows them first as kids, where they play all these games like that, as most kids do, and then Trevor Moore discovers his brother's porno mag, Playboy, and like just gets obsessed with Playboy ever since. And Zach Kreger grows up, and he's a very good, straight-laced kid who has a girlfriend, and they're waiting till they're married to have sex. And they do these seminars for these kids about abstinence and stuff. And there's one bit of controversy in the movie where I saw it in the theater, and it was what it was. When it came out on DVD and Blu-ray, they dub over the word. Zach Kreger is describing why it's good to wait and not have premarital sex, because his sister had premarital sex, and then the kid came out, as they say in the original theatrical version, the kid came out retarded. And then they use it again saying because the kid was retarded. And obviously that's controversial these days to use that word in that context. And when they released it on DVD and Blu-ray, they dubbed over the word retarded with crackhead. Now, as I said, it's not very PC to use that word. So fine, you replace it with the word crackhead, but it didn't exactly fit with the way they were saying. Like actually they used it 3 times in the movie. Throwing over just crackhead. It didn't work with the dialogue, so they probably could have picked something else. Anyway, that was the little bit of controversy in the movie. The movie tanked anyway, so not a lot of people saw it. But essentially, Zach Kreger is going to have sex with his girlfriend before prom, and when they're there at the party, him and Trevor Moore are drinking, and he ends up opening the wrong door, falling down the stairs to the basement, and hitting his head hard, and he falls into a coma for like 4 years. And when he wakes up, it's 4 years later. His dad's moved away, his girlfriend has moved away, and is now a Playboy centerfold, and so he has to go across country to the Playboy mansion, which is Mecca for his Trevor Moore's character, to try and find his girlfriend and what the hell she's been doing. Why is she a Playboy playmate now, and why she left him. And it's just a very, very crazy, very raunchy, very hilarious road trip movie that they go on. Now you've also got Craig Robinson in there in a supporting role. You have Raquel Alessi, who plays Cindy, Zach Cregger's girlfriend, who's now the Playboy playmate. Hugh Hefner plays himself, because apparently Robert Wagner was going to play Hugh Hefner, but then they showed a rough cut of the movie, or a finished cut, or early cut of the movie to Hugh Hefner, because they weren't going to be able to use the Playboy Mansion or Playboy anything in the movie. And he thought it was really funny, so he agreed to reshoot all of Robert Wagner's scenes as himself. And so they get to use the Playboy Mansion and the Playboy Playmates and stuff. Let me see, you also have Cedric Yarbrough in there, Sarah Jean Underwood. You get various Playboy Playmates playing as themselves. And yeah, I think it's a hilarious movie. Not everyone agrees, but it's very, very, very funny movie, if you ask me. So that was Miss March. Number 1, we have a film from 2001 called Tomcats. Now I saw this one with my best friend Bevan when it came out in theater, and we laughed our asses off. It's hilarious. This one, again, stars Jerry O'Connell, but you've also got Jake Busey, Shannon Elizabeth, Horatio Sands, Jamie Presley. Let me see. David Ogden Stiers is in there. And also Bill Maher. Bill Maher is in there as sort of like a loan shark kind of thing. And essentially it's a bunch of these wild freewheeling buddies, all womanized and stuff, and they decide to contribute to this betting pool between all of them, that they don't think any of them, they want to play the field as long as they can, and none of them are ever going to get married. So they keep putting into this pool, and the last one standing, last man who's single, gets all the money. Well, several years go by, and all but 2 of the friends are married in one way or another. One's married to a guy, another one's married to his hot wife, who he always thinks is cheating on her. That's Horatio Sands and Jamie Presley. And the only 2 left standing are Jerry O'Connell and Jake Busey. So Jerry O'Connell decides he has to get Jake Busey's character to fall in love, and he ends up inadvertently meeting Shannon Elizabeth, who is an undercover cop, and they hash a scheme to get Shannon Elizabeth to date Jake Busey and get him to want to marry her and propose, and actually get married, so that Jerry O'Connell can win the pot. Because it turns out that they contributed money and invested the pot in a mutual fund, and it is like, I think it's like a few $1 million now. So he really wants that money because he's into Bill Maher as a loan shark. And he's a very charming loan shark, but he keeps repossessing all of his stuff. So he's like, as the movie goes on, he has very, very few things left in his apartment. So he needs the money really bad. And it's just a hilarious movie with an awesome soundtrack. And you see it in the opening credits. There's the Offspring song, "Want You Bad," and it's a great soundtrack anyway. But that one is the very center point of the movie. But yeah, it's a great movie. It's so funny. Okay, so that is it for this list. And I'm not sure if it'll be another top 10 list or a spotlight video next, but that could be a surprise. Okay, well, like and subscribe, comment, suggest, dealer's choice, and I'll see you next time. Toodles.